Folks, what a long week it has been, but we've made it to Friday. And Fridays are for looking at the future. There are no bold predictions this week, but we can still look ahead as every day past the game is one day closer to Ohio State playing again in the playoffs. So what's that going to look like? Let's try and figure it out. That's Bill Landis and Jeremy Birmingham. I am Austin Ward. Okay, we know Ohio State is going to play most likely a home game, Bill. Mm-hmm. They're currently the number 8, according to the unnecessary projected bracket. Do you think that is where the Buckeyes will land on Sunday?
I don't know. I guess I would say probably not. It is hard for me to know exactly what the playoff committee might do for teams that lose conference championship games. Ward Manuel, the Michigan AD, who's speaking for the playoff committee, I thought pretty vehemently said that they're not going to do a whole lot with teams that aren't playing in conference championships, which just seem to suggest they're going to leave everyone else kind of where they are. But that just seems a little far-fetched to me if you're talking about a scenario where suddenly Ohio State and Penn State have the same number of losses again, that head-to-head won't matter. So then you can ask yourself, well, is Georgia going to get behind Ohio State? If Georgia loses, could Texas be behind Ohio State if Texas loses? Could Ohio State having a win over a potential Big Ten champ Penn State boost it anyway? So I think because there are all those lingering questions that could lead to some movement for Ohio State, my guess right now would be that they're probably not the 8 seed, but not in any danger of not hosting, but perhaps they could move up a little bit.
Berm, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is in some ways a bold prediction show based on what we're doing now.
There are games that affect Ohio State. We're going to, talk about that a little bit, but we got to know, because here's the thing. What seed we think Ohio State is going to be? Who would be the best matchup for Ohio State in the college football playoff? And then thirdly, if this game is in the horseshoe, which it's going to be, what you think the crowd is going to be like. Those are the 3 things. This is not Thursday. That's why I didn't tee it up that way. But those are predictions that we can make about the Buckeyes going into this weekend.
It's a few things Friday.
It is.
There you go.
Here's the deal. I understand the desire to make the conference championship games matter and to suggest that if you win one as a Power 4 conference, you get a first round bye, which in itself I think it's a noble goal. I still think it's stupid. Okay. Because I don't think that a 3-loss Big 12 team should be getting a first round bye no matter what. If let's say Boise State were to lose this weekend, which I think is unlikely, but it's possible, right? So there's a world where that happens. There's a world.
Ooh, there it is.
Where that happens. If that conference championship game matters, and it matters to the degree that you're giving someone a real bonus for winning it, I think it also needs to matter in that if you lose it, it affects your standing. And so I can't see a single scenario where Penn State, with a second loss, knowing that they lost to Ohio State head-to-head at home, is ahead of Ohio State. I think that's absolutely folly, and I think it seems impossible that could happen. But the committee, much like every other committee that has ruled on college football in the last decade, is dumb. And the people who are running it are stupid. And there's a very good chance that they will make some very stupid decision. A 3-loss Georgia team should not be ahead of Ohio State. I don't think that's fair. And I understand the Georgia narrative is Ohio State lost to an unranked team. Everyone knows what Ohio State Michigan is. I don't care what Michigan's record is. I don't care how bad people think Michigan is this year. Everyone knows what that game is. No one's going to hold Ohio State, or no one should hold Ohio State losing to Georgia over their head any more than people should hold the fact that Georgia only had to go to 8 overtimes to beat Georgia Tech. Rivalries are different. The games matter, obviously. No one watched that game and thought Ohio State was all of a sudden a terrible team. They had a bad day. But if you are thinking seriously about putting a 3-loss team that didn't win its conference over Ohio State, who was clearly in the committee's mind one of the top 2 teams in the country the entire year, then that's just stupid. And then nothing matters. None of the games really matter.
The part that always annoys me is that the committee does make up They work backwards. They're going to find a solution, which right now seems to be sneaking Alabama into the field any which possible way that it can. But it changes every year. Alabama and Ohio State seem to be test cases for new rules. Even when we're talking, though, about should the conference championship game matter or not matter, like it seems to have gone by the wayside that the Big Ten already is playing more conference games than the SEC. Like, if Georgia loses another one, I don't really understand. Yes, they played in a more aggressive schedule according to the strength of schedule than most teams, and they faced a more difficult slate to get there. But the SEC continuing to get the benefit of the doubt when it's not playing the same number of conference games as anybody else. Like, this is a weekend where that, like, okay, great, they finally got to an even number. Like, let's compare that. I don't mean this
Georgia
to be
did play an FCS school this year. Okay, let's remember that. Like,
one fewer conference
has to count
game
against them.
Yeah, I think it should, and that's like, I don't think that this ultimately is going to come down that much to a decision between Ohio State and Georgia, because it seems more likely to me that Penn State will lose to Oregon, and then that triggers one of the things that's supposed to be so important to the College Football Playoff Selection Committee, which they look at the losses, and that would be the same, and then they're supposed to look at head-to-head, and Ohio State won in Happy Valley. I think that's why I don't believe on Sunday that Ohio State, they definitely can't be lower than 8, but they should almost certainly be higher than 8. I think that they will be the 7 seed, because I think they'll probably try and thread a needle, and one explanation will not make any sense compared to the other, but I bet that they split the two. That's what I think is going to happen.
Yeah, I don't know. For me, the one fewer conference game for Georgia specifically doesn't carry much weight, because Georgia played Clemson and Georgia Tech outside of its league. So they still played UMass and Tennessee Tech, but they did play 2 power non-conference games. So Ohio State didn't play any. So I don't know that that'll matter so much, but I think it's more about just like sheer number of losses, right? 3 losses compared to 2.
Right. But it's also one less countable game, because the Tennessee Tech game doesn't really count.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know. Like,
does it?
We want to. What's the difference? Yeah, count. What do you mean counts like towards their record? Yeah,
but it's like it used to be that, like, if you played an FCS school, it didn't even count on your strength of schedule or anything like that, right?
You couldn't count it every year towards bowl eligibility, but you could periodically if you need to. Like, I don't want to go
clearly
that far down.
They're bowl eligible. That's irrelevant. But my point eligible. Is, like, my point is, if you look at their schedule and then you say, okay, they only actually played 11 games against FCS or against FBS schools, and they have 3 losses. Like, I don't even know how they're in the playoff with 3 losses in 11 games against FBS schools
for beating Tennessee and Ole Miss.
Okay,
or Texas.
So you
Texas
make a
and
good
Tennessee.
point, Bill.
But the strength of schedule argument, I don't even know how Ohio State and Georgia actually compare strength of schedule wise. I'm kind of the mind that they might split that maybe Georgia stays ahead of them, but Penn State would fall behind them if both Georgia and Penn State lose. I also kind of think Georgia's going to win against Texas, so it's a bit of a moot point. But it's a conversation worth having if Georgia were to lose and fall to that 3rd loss. I think what's more realistic conversation and more pressing is how do you honor the head-to-head between Ohio State and Penn State if Penn State loses to Oregon? And I think the committee will, which, like, I think Ohio State will probably end up being the 7 seed, if I had to guess, if I had to put a number on it.
I think.
Well, you all go ahead. Sorry.
I mean, I want to at least acknowledge that what Ward Manuel now, or Gary Barta before him, or anyone else who's had to stand up and do these teleconferences, they're in an impossible spot, because there is no one piece of logic or evaluation that you can apply to 130 schools that are playing in different conferences and playing different schedules, and have really, in the end, smaller bodies of work than other sports. Like, I recognize fully that it's impossible. But if we're going to take that and try and figure out what that means for Sunday, Bill, you mentioned, Ward Manuel said on Tuesday that the teams that don't have an additional data point, those are also known as games, that they won't move, because Ohio State and Tennessee's resumes won't change. Now, that's not true, because if, as you mentioned, if Penn State wins the conference championship, Ohio State's resume would get better from that. But let's just take that for what it is. If that is true, and none of those other teams are moving in the pecking order, that's why I say Ohio State cannot fall below Tennessee. That the lowest it could possibly be in the rankings is the 8 seed. But we've seen them make these adjustments in the past. Again, taking that just at face value. Well, if you want the conference championships to matter, and they do, you can't on one side say, well, there's no movement for the other teams. But if SMU loses, hey, see ya, they're gone. Like, okay, that's not using the same standard, even for the teams that are in the top 12 right now. So it's crazy to get worked up about it because, again, I started this by saying they have a job that makes no sense. Logically, you cannot use the same standard for everyone. But you shouldn't be pretending like all these things can be true at the same time. So,
yeah,
as Solo Sikoa would say, losing matters, right? There has to be consequences. And if Penn State loses, then it will have lost the same number of games as Ohio State, and one of those games will have been to Ohio State. That one, there is no argument against that. Every piece of logic and every standard they use says that has to count.
I agree 100% with that one. Like I hesitate to predict what that group of people will do because, as you said, they set the field and then justify it later. But that would be a heck of a thing to try to do, is like just to ignore that head-to-head result. It'd be one thing if Penn State had like some pretty impressive wins to stack up, and then you say you want to ignore, but Penn State doesn't have that either. Penn State will not have beaten a team in the field. Ohio State will have beaten two. I don't even, Penn State's second best win, I think, record-wise, is like Minnesota, yeah. Or like Bowling Green, maybe. I don't know. So,
I think it's Minnesota.
Yeah, it's not a super, and they won that game by a point on the road. So it's not a super compelling resume other than just stacking 11 wins.
Yeah, I mean, what were you going to say about Ward Manual? Just that it's stupid, Berm?
No, I mean, my initial point I was going to say earlier is that you have a game like the Clemson and SMU game, like, which changes a lot of things. Or again, UNLV, if they can pull off an upset against Boise State, who's not played particularly well in the last few weeks, like, then all of these, there is movement coming here, if in this top 12, and the games have to count, and that's all I'm saying. Like, so I don't think that Clemson. No one's thinking Clemson would be in the playoff unless they win this game this weekend against SMU. And like, do they deserve to be in there just because they beat SMU? I don't know, but like, this is the system we have, and the facts are pretty simple when it comes to Ohio State and Penn State. I don't know how you would keep a 3-loss Georgia ahead of Ohio State, even though they have 2 wins against the field like the Buckeyes would. I guess they'd have 3 if Clemson ends up in the playoff, and so maybe that gives them that may give them a boost. But either way, the bottom line is we feel fairly confident that on December 21st, probably at 8 p.m., Ohio State's playing in the Horseshoe, right?
Yeah. And again, I've said that throughout the week because my understanding is that Notre Dame has already been telling its ticket holders and its boosters and donors to expect that to be a Friday night game for them at 8 o'clock, which means that the next order would be ESPN setting prime time for Saturday night. I can't imagine any world in this world where ESPN is saying, no, we're good. We don't want Ohio State on our airwaves. We're going to send that over to
Alabama, Ohio State, Tennessee, Ohio State, Georgia, Ohio State, Texas. I think they're going to take that.
Yeah, they definitely are. So if you look at some of these possible candidates for Ohio State to play, Bill, and I don't know the right way to put this, whether it's the matchup that you think is going to happen, what you think is the most entertaining, what you think is the best. I mean, all those are probably very different conversations.
Yeah.
Like Tennessee, Indiana, Alabama, I don't know, Boise State, Arizona State.
Like, could be.
Those are that's the pool that we're working with here. You can answer this however you want. Like, what do you think would be ideal for you on December 21st?
Well, what is ideal for me and ideal for Ohio State, I don't think are the same thing, because
they're probably not.
I would love to see an SEC team come to the shoe. But if Ohio State can play Indiana again or play whichever team wins the Big 12 championship, I guess even there's like a way possibly it could be. I guess it wouldn't be Boise, because I think if Boise wins, they'll get a bye, but it could be UNLV.
Right. Well, UNLV would be the 12, right? I mean, if they don't get an automatic bye, do they? Because they
depends on what they do with the Big 12 champion or UNLV or Boise, like that.
Yeah.
Because of the insanity of this system, one of those teams is going to get a bye.
Right. And like, I don't know what, like Clemson's like 16th. And like, if Clemson wins the ACC, how high will they jump? Like, could Clemson be the 12? I have no idea if they win. Like, so I don't know. It seems to me like the most likely candidates for Ohio State would be either Alabama or Tennessee or Indiana. Clearly, in terms of like wanting to get out of the first round, you'd take the team you just beat a couple of weeks ago pretty handily. But man, I would really love to see Alabama or Tennessee come play in the shoe. Maybe you get a little bit of snow, see how they deal with that. Like that would be something to behold. But yeah, there's a pathway there. Like, especially if you're the 7. If you're the 7 as Ohio State and you get to play like a 10-seeded Indiana, and then you advance, and I think you'd play like the SEC winner if you did that.
Mm-hmm.
Like go play Texas down in the Sugar Bowl instead of going like jumping right into your rematch with Oregon, presumably in the Rose Bowl. I wouldn't hate that path. I guess either way, Ohio State's going to be playing. I don't think Ohio State's going to move up to the 6. I think they're going to be the 7. So if that's the case, I guess they'd be playing either the Big Ten champ or the SEC champ in the quarterfinal if they got out of the first round, right?
I don't know.
If they're the 7, if they move up to 7, they're going to be playing either Georgia or Texas in that
game.
They
play the 2. Yeah.
I'm reasonably confident.
I look at this from the,
which is crazy. Now we're talking
from
about Georgia going up to number 2 for winning with this schedule they played. Like,
yeah,
because they beat Texas twice. Cool, awesome, great system.
Texas, who has no good wins at all. So it's very fun. It's a cool system.
It would be in New Orleans though if they played Georgia. It wouldn't be in Atlanta. The ACC champ is going to the Peach Bowl, I think.
That's correct.
Well, that's just a little victory, I guess. I look at it from the perspective of like what's the worst matchups for Ohio State in the first round, and to me, that is Texas. Obviously, I think this is the worst matchup for Ohio State. I don't like that matchup at all for the Buckeyes because of Texas's ability to play offense and defense. I don't particularly love the idea.
I think that's the least likely option. But continue.
Again, if Texas loses this weekend, they have 2 losses and no real quality wins. There's at least a scenario there where it's 8-9 Ohio State.
Yeah, that's good.
Texas.
Yeah.
I would not want to see probably Tennessee in the first round just because Ohio State is moving things around potentially with their offensive line, and Tennessee, as we talked about heading into the week of Michigan, like there's maybe 5 defensive lines around the country that are like the best defensive lines, and it would be like the 5th one of the 5 that Ohio State's had to face, which I don't think is, which is really unfortunate considering how bad the offensive line injuries have cost.
Were you going to say unfair? You got to play the game.
Not unfair. Man. Not unfair. It's unfortunate. It's unfortunate.
Unfortunate.
They had to play Penn State, had to play Oregon, had to play Michigan, had to play, now if you have to throw Tennessee in there too, like it's a rough break, but it is what happens. Other than that, I mean, I don't know that there's a single team that I look at that's in the presumptive field that you think Ohio State can't beat if the Buckeyes play their best game, but it's been a really long time since we've seen Ohio State play a game that I think would be considered like a complete game, offense, defense, and special teams. So, I don't know that there's anyone they couldn't lose to. And I think that's the weird part of where we're at with this current Ohio State team.
Well, the weird part is the way that this bracket is constructed. And if it is Indiana, I'm going to get into that after this quick interruption. Sorry for the interruption, folks. And I'm even more sorry that the real star of the show is not on a Freaky Friday edition of the Podcast Daily. Liberty getting the week off. She's regrouping a little bit to get ready for the college football playoff. A rough one last week. She got halfway there getting that Caleb Downs interception. If that had been parlayed into the Emeka Ibuka touchdown, maybe a very different conversation, and she'd be here to make a prediction for the game. She's been having a great time all year, as we've mentioned, thanks to Future Fans. The Future Fans football box, one of those right over there. It's on sale right now. If you can use the code Buckeye, you can get 10% off at futurefans.com/OSU. Again, it's a Columbus business. They've been awesome. Liberty has had a great time getting involved and watching more of the Ohio State games throughout the season and having a little bit more knowledge and fun and investment in what's going on out there. It's unique. It's fun. It's storybook led. She's loved to open up and get the play sheet out. She's been drawing up some plays herself to maybe have some ideas. She wanted to show them off to the Buckeyes after last weekend so that they maybe can get something new cooking once they get back on the field. But that opportunity will come. She'll be back on the show, and until then, she wanted to make sure to remind you that code Buckeye gets you 10% off through December 13th. You can also go out and get it in stores at Learning Express in UA, Worthington, and New Albany. They're the best. It's futurefans.com/OSU. And we'll be back to talk a bit more about Ohio State right now. So I think the worst part about this, given the way the College Football Playoff Selection Committee positioned this on Tuesday, which again, maybe they'll change. We have no idea, no way of knowing for sure.
They just reshuffle the whole thing.
I mean, that's also why
Ohio State's the 11. Yeah.
How many years have I been saying that this Tuesday night selection show is a complete waste of time?
Yeah.
And that you don't need these mock updated rankings throughout the year. If the only one that matters is Sunday, just wait. Like everyone else can build their own at any time they want. For the committee to have to go out and constantly say, this is where it is right now. And then for Ward Manuel to say, these teams that have already played every single game, they're not moving compared to each other. Well, that means if Ohio State could be benefited by a loss to Penn State or Georgia or Texas, and they move up one, and Indiana is still sitting there at 10, like there's nothing in there that says they have to avoid rematches. There's nothing that says they have to avoid conference affiliation. When I said, what would the mood be like, and will the Horseshoe absolutely sell out for a playoff game? It's crazy with the passion of this fan base that you would even have to ask that question. But like that game was only 2 weeks ago, and they're going to rematch it again. I don't know why we need to see that. And I don't know how many people would want to see that.
I do. Yeah. I don't know that I'd predict a full house for an Indiana game. I think you'd get a full house for an SEC game because you'd have 100%. Their fans in there too. Right. Yeah. But yeah, I think it'd be a little bit of a letdown of an atmosphere if it were Indiana again. And I don't even say that as like a criticism of Ohio State fans. I'm just like speaking, like if I don't want to watch the same game that again, like in such short period of time. And I guess it would be a month or about a month, right? From when they played to when the actual playoff game would be. But even still, that's, I think if you're Ohio State from like an atmosphere, good vibes kind of perspective, that's probably the worst case scenario is getting Indiana again. But it also is certainly your most favorable football matchup.
Yeah, it's the best path to getting forward out of the first round. But and I'm thinking selfishly, like covering the game, I already saw it, and I've seen a bunch of Ohio State and Indiana games. I know how it's going to end. But like, it doesn't even, there'd be some level of catharsis, maybe, not for everyone, for Ryan Day and the Buckeyes to beat an SEC team and also to say the program is on track. I've faced a bunch of criticism. Beating Indiana is not going to provide any level of boost or any additional confidence that then you're going to turn around and go play, Texas or Georgia in the Sugar Bowl. Like we'd be spending all of the entirety of the month, even after a playoff win, being like, well, there's still a bunch of questions about Ryan Day's future and buyouts, and this is the one that's actually going to count. I think and maybe this is not true for everyone, if you beat Tennessee or Alabama in the first round in the Horseshoe, that's it. You can move on. Everyone won't, and I'm not suggesting that's how everyone should feel, but I think that would be a level of validation that would obviously not come from beating Indiana.
Maybe not, but it's also like you won a playoff game and you're moving on, so accept it and be happy that you got a good draw. So that's the way I view it. Like I don't care who they beat if they win the games. And I'm sure the playoff committee would like to have sellouts. I'm interested just in how the ticket allocation is for a game like this. Like, is it a normal Ohio State crowd, or how much of it is corporate, entities selling things out? We don't know any of these details yet. So it's hard for me to know like what would happen as far as the crowd. I actually think you'd probably see a lot of Indiana fans there, probably like a quarter of the stadium Indiana fans, as opposed to like the 14 of them that showed up last time, because it's Indiana in the playoff and it may not happen again for quite some time. So I bet they would show up in force. And I think despite the fact that Ohio State fans are feeling in a negative way right now, it's 4 days before Christmas. A lot of people would be using it to go to the game for Christmas presents for their families. It's still in the San Diego of the Midwest. Everyone loves to travel to Columbus, and
Amen.
I think that you'd probably still get 95,000 plus in there, and I don't think anyone's going to complain about it. The reality is the Ohio State Indiana game was the best atmosphere in the Horseshoe this season, so why not do it again?
Actually, if it's a night game, that it's a novelty now that Ohio State plays a big in the game at night in the shoe. That would probably be enough maybe to get it pretty full. I didn't thought of that.
ESPN does have a chance to do the funniest thing possible, which is
put them on noon on TNT.
If it becomes 7 versus 10 and it's Ohio State Indiana, and they're like, no, that's a big noon game. TNT can have it. Like, or they can be the heroes and say, Ohio State fans, you've been begging for it, and Fox wouldn't give it to you. The Big Ten commissioners won't give it to you. The schedule makers hate you. Here you go. ESPN, the benevolent overlord of college football, has bestowed upon you a primetime playoff game on December 21st. Feast your eyes on this.
As someone who's going to have to be standing on the sideline the entire day for that game, I'm rooting for noon, dude. Like, I'm rooting for noon. I do not want to have to start a game at 8 p.m. on December 21st. I mean, we were talking, no, thank you.
It'll be more like 8:20 too, because you have to wait for the 4:00 game to end before that.
Right. Like, no thanks, dude. Like, I don't want to be out there till midnight. No. Like,
what if we get you some bourbon before the game?
You know how bad commercials have been throughout this season already? Imagine it in the playoff.
We're out of the Fox world, baby. We're with ESPN. Start. We're with ESPN now.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
It's going to be great.
Touchdown commercial, kickoff commercial. We're done with it.
ESPN is here to save us all.
The question is, and these are things that, again, I want to try. We need to figure out over these next couple of days as this all gets figured out. Is the ticket allocation? I don't believe Ohio State, if they host, is going to be able to have recruits there because it's a playoff game. Then it's still probably a dead period, I think, at that time. So although I don't know,
what's a dead period? Those don't exist.
Well, those still exist. I mean, Ohio State just signed
what about this, Berm?
You have 27-man class that they couldn't go visit Duane Holmes with for the first time ever.
But let's think about this. You may not be able to talk to high school recruits, but the transfer portal is open. Those kids are taking visits.
That's what I'm saying. Like, how does this work?
Yeah. Well, I bet
Mike Green would love to come watch a playoff game.
Get him a ticket.
Can we get some guidance, please?
I think they just need to get a suite up in the press box and just stock it full of transfer portal visitors. Anyway, what else were you going to say about the logistics, Berm?
No, I just don't. I mean, those are questions that need to be answered and asked. And, this week when we had a chance, obviously Wednesday's press conference with Ryan Day got a little, away from some of these logistical things. But, as far as the transfers go and what are they doing with all these guys that are going to leave the programs of these schools in the next few weeks? Like, it's going to be so stupid. Oh, man. I don't like it, but I mean, I hope they win. Because the way I see it is like, just win, baby. I believe I'm gonna coin that phrase.
Yeah.
That's straight to the point. That'd look good on a t-shirt.
Yeah.
Maybe a little black and silver with it.
Well, yeah, you can't put any red in there, or Ohio State's trademarking people will be upset about it.
Yeah.
And then you can have a kid with the dumbest haircut ever. Really ties the whole thing.
And like peeing on a logo of the team they're playing.
Oh, wow. That's a lot of great ideas that have just been plucked randomly from thin air.
We're marketing geniuses.
We are. Got into the freakiness at the end of a Friday, as we are wont to do. Bill, what's the plan for Kings of the North this weekend? Is there a post-game show after the Big Ten championship game?
Yes. We'll be live Saturday night, and then we'll be live again Saturday night, probably at 11, unless like the Big Ten title game is close, and then we'll wait for that to end. And then Sunday, basically, as soon as we have a bracket, we'll be live doing that, and then I'll be hustling over to the Woody with you guys when we're done.
Yep, that will be the next time that we all reconvene together in person after the bracket release and after Ryan Day's press conference on Sunday, which should be a better mood. I don't know if it will be. We'll find out. We're going to find out who the Buckeyes play on Sunday. We're going to find out when and where. Although I think we have a pretty good idea for some of that. That's the lay of the land heading into this weekend. No Buckeyes game for us to cover, but we'll still have plenty to discuss the fallout of with these other championship games elsewhere and getting ready for the playoff, which is now just 2 weeks away. Thanks for spending the week with us on the podcast daily. If you did, if you didn't, you're not listening to me anyway. We'll catch you next time. That's Bill Landis and Jeremy Birmingham. I'm Austin Ward. See ya.